You're listening to WKDW Radio 97.5 FM and KDWRadio.com, broadcasting from the Bishop West Real Estate Mobile Tower right here in absolutely gorgeous Northport, Florida. Just a quick reminder, keep it safe on the way home, drive careful, and keep your speed in check. Everybody getting home safe is the key to having a great week, let alone a weekend. So if we can keep everybody safe on the roads, that's a good start to a great rest of our life. So keep that in mind. I've got a very special guest in the house who always draws attention to things that are happening in Northport and things that maybe we all should be looking at in the future of Northport. He's been an avid part of the community for probably close to 20 years or more. And I'm hoping that we can shed some light on some possibilities of thinking forward in Northport. Peter Bartolotta is in the house today.
Good afternoon.
How you doing, buddy?
Very good, thanks. A beautiful day today, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
Yep. Spent a little time working outside, and the humidity was low, and jumped in the pool, and the pool was 85 with no heater. And just gorgeous. I mean, this is paradise we live in.
It is. It's fantastic, and you know, it's what we all moved here for.
Absolutely.
We are still a very large community of 70,000 plus, growing leaps and bounds every day, and yet we still have this really cool feel about our community that is where you get to know everybody. If you're active, there isn't anybody you don't know in this town. And I think that's the whole key to being part of the fabric of this town is the more that you can get involved, even if it's little bits and pieces here and there, I think it opens the doorways to communication.
Sure does.
You've got some really good practice at this, getting involved and you know, putting your foot out there, and sometimes you get your foot stepped on.
Oh yeah.
And other times people tend to listen and say, you know, that's not a bad idea. But if we don't all learn to start talking and listening to each other, aren't we going to be in the same spot that we are at today?
Sure.
And we've been through that too, haven't we?
Yes, we have. And that's the key. It's all communications. It's all about getting people engaged and talking and not trying to ram one idea down somebody's throat. It's collaboration. And, you know, that's the part of living in Northport that I've enjoyed the most. It's meeting all the people and the different viewpoints. But as you often say, John, as different as we are, we're really all the same. So
we are. And I just think that we all need to learn how to maybe listen to each other's conversation. We've had people on with you, and it's ironic that two people who have completely different viewpoints actually had the same viewpoint.
Yeah.
Maybe
well, at least close.
Perspective. What's that?
At least close.
Well, no, and that's the beauty in having the conversation. If you never have the conversation, you would never even say you were close.
Yeah. Sure.
And I think that's the whole key is I think we all need to maybe step back. I'm as much as I'm on social media with my radio show and other things, I'm not a fan of people having a one-sided point of view on social media and thinking that they can just ram things down people's throat without listening to the other side. I'm a fan of everyone has an opinion of what should happen, but if there's some common ground in there, I just think things get completed quicker when we hit common ground versus the tug of war of two different sides.
Yep, I agree.
What's the plan for today? What is it that, and I'm going to ask you this because I'm going to tee it up for you,
sure.
But to have this conversation that we're about to have today, it really isn't anything but about the future, right?
Exactly. And, and I've been an advocate of a future for Northport ever since I got here. I think it's a great city. And how often do you have the opportunity to participate in the growth of the city that you live in? Usually wherever we move, it's kind of like set, and maybe you can do a little bit here, a little bit there. But I mean, you could literally create a vision for the entire city. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. The Northport Economic Development Corporation's action initiatives or strategy that they had created. But let me tee it up with a little bit of history. I got involved in economic development back around 2000, I guess. I've lost track of the time. I've been here since '93. But I was on the Economic Development Advisory Board. There were 7 of us. There was a spot builder, a housewife, a retailer, and all great people with great ideas, but we really couldn't do anything. None of us had, were landowners or had the ability to execute. So it was decided to put together an organization made up of strong regional leaders, and they formed the Business and Economic Development Advisory Board, otherwise known as BDAB. And it was a great organization, but the difficulty was they couldn't, you couldn't brainstorm. And when you're coming up with plans, you need to be able to throw all ideas out on the table without feeling like you're going to get ridiculed. And that's hard to do when the media is sitting in the same room with you, because you might say something that they take the wrong way, and the next thing you know, it's printed up and you're in the paper. So BDAB didn't really do the job that we wanted it to. It set up a plan, but we never executed on that plan. The city never did. And that was a city advisory board. Then around 2011, the Chamber and Vision Northport got together and said, what can we do? What should the vision be for Toledo Blade, that corridor? And they came up with a plan. It was a good vision, but the question was, how do you do it? And the answer was form a private economic development corporation with no government money, that they could operate in a free manner, and then present. And this is where people think it's, they get confused. They come up with a plan, but the plan has to be executed through the city's approval. It's not they go out and execute it themselves. But we came up with the idea of a private EDC that was formed on August 16th of 2011, was formed a corporation. And a year later, January of 2012, we introduced the plan that I'm going to show you now. So this is the plan that we had presented. And if we can cue up the first slide, it's the Northport Economic Development. That's the Northport EDC, where vision and future meet. And, visioning is just looking out and coming up with some crazy thoughts, but then you figure out how do you execute the ones that are good. And that's what this is all about. Next, the next slide just talks about the organization. And what we wanted to do was to foster and encourage positive and measurable economic development through entrepreneurial thinking, collaboration, and innovation. Very simple mission statement. Next. We put together 2 boards. We had a board of directors, and to be on the board of directors, you had to live in Northport or own a business in Northport. And the advisory board was made up of senior executives in the region, from Bradenton to Naples. So if you look at some of those names, I don't know if you can see them all, but Dave Dignam was on, Ted Ehrlichman, who was the chief operating officer of Suncoast Workforce, vice president of Gilbane Building Company. They're a multi-billion-dollar construction company. Gene Matthews, John Weissman, president of Core Construction, again, a billion-dollar construction company. We had 2 hospital CEOs, Pete Wozniak at Venice Regional and Tom Rice of Fawcett. And on the board of directors side, we had a fellow by the name of Richie Satcher, who was the Peace River Medical Center in Charlotte and Punta Gorda. He was the market CEO for those hospitals. So we had 3 hospital CEOs sitting on that board. It was pretty extensive. And for those of you that want to see this plan, you'll be able to do it through this show. And I guess you keep this online, right, John?
Yes.
Okay, so you can go there, or you can go to a website that I just started called FOR Northport, spell it all out, .com, and go to the EDC, and this presentation will be there, so you can look at it and make copies of it and do whatever you want with it. The next is we had EDC members, and again, it covered the gamut. It was a very diverse group of individuals and companies. And they all had an interest in Northport's future. Yes, some of them would make money out of it, but it's not necessarily wrong. I mean, that's the business they're in. But it was a very diverse group of executives. Next. So this group came up with, in 1 year's time, the 2011-2012 action initiatives. And I'm an acronym kind of guy. So ACTION stood for Active Collaboration that Inspires Opportunity Now. So it's really important to understand what we try to do is come up with a collaborative plan that we could execute now, not 20 years from now, but now. So much of what you're about to see was doable very quickly. Next. Okay, this is probably one of the most important slides, and I'm going to read it to everybody. The initiative objectives. So each one of the initiatives you're going to see had the same objectives. It was to develop a community plan which engages an integrated set of economic catalysts that encompasses the entire city of Northport. We're 104 square miles. It wasn't one little spot. We had to cover the entire city. The plan will have specific projects with defined outcomes and realistic timeframes. These outcomes will focus around action initiatives, each of which will be driven by a team of Northport EDC members who will focus on the following outcomes. Number one, identify economic engines. Number two, identify locations where where these initiatives could flourish. Number three, quantify revenue and cost elements of the initiative. 4, identify community partners. 5, identify funding sources to quick start the initiatives. Number 6, identify realistic timeframes for implementation. And 7, and probably most important, is gain community support of the initiatives. So that was very clear, defined objectives. Okay, so let's look at what we came up with. The vision for the future. We took Northport and broke it into 5 economic programs. Main Street, which is the yellow, and that's along the 41 corridor. The second one was ecotourism. Those are those red dots. And by the way, we didn't go with any specific location because we don't want to drive land prices up. So they were in general in nature. But many of them, we actually had the land identified. The third is Warm Mineral Springs. That's the green. The west side is the purple, otherwise known as West Villages today. And the blue is Toledo Blade. So those are the 5 initiative areas. Now let's talk about each one individually. Okay, the first one is the marketplace. We call it the marketplace, and it basically runs the entire 41 corridor from the Charlotte County line right up to River Road. I'm sorry, up to Ortiz, which is where that at the left side of that yellow, and right above it is Warm Mineral Springs. So just to give you a perspective on where that is. Okay, next. Within that, we had 3 different programs. One was a collegiate district. We were working with the University of South Florida, and at the time, the head of the college of the university in Sarasota thought Northport's campus would be bigger than Sarasota's. So we looked at it to bring a campus here with room and board. It would create an artist's area where there would be bistros and what have you along the corridor, similar to what any normal college town would have. We were looking at that around the area of Northport Boulevard and 41, up in that area. The second was the Canal Walk. It started off as a river walk, and Jim Blucher, former commissioner, introduced me to that concept. Riverwalk is in Texas. I forget where it's at now, but we call it a canal walk because Bradenton stole the Riverwalk. So we changed it to Canal Walk. All right. But we've got a beautiful canal in the Cocoa Plum that is scenic, that we thought if we could create that as a town center meeting area where the community could gather around and have opportunities out there. And, Vision Northport put the canal races together and the dragon races along that canal. We got so much opportunity there. So that was to be a retail hub. Similar to Meisner Park in Boca Raton. If any of you have ever been there, that would be a model that I would have thought would work well here. The third area was a corporate commerce district. Again, along the 41 corridor, we had the land identified. And the idea here was that we could create a corporate headquarters location with really scenic drive-throughs, with corporate buildings, blending into the environment, and ensuring a place where high-paying jobs could be had. And we could have regional offices as well as headquarter offices. I modeled that over Parsippany, New Jersey. When I lived up in New Jersey, they had a great corporate park like that with beautiful oak trees, and then these campuses would just be kind of tucked in between. It was beautiful, and all high-paying jobs. So when you look at those different elements of the Main Street initiative, they basically generate about $60 to $150 million in new construction and over 300 jobs. The next plan was for the ecotourism. And we have 3 locations for ecotourism. One was along the Myakka River, which is in the bottom of that slide, that red dot, right around the River Road area. The other one is up around Deer Prairie Creek, which is right above it. And on the far right, we were looking at an area called the Orange Hammock, which the city in its infinite wisdom gave it away. But anyway, you still have land up there that we can utilize. And the idea behind ecotourism came from our chairman at the time, Rob Rosenberg, who was a tourism professional, spent his entire life in tourism, and Adachi Architects, who came to our meetings and became a member, and they're one of the leading architectural firms in ecotourism. So what does ecotourism look like? Next. Look at the activities that are involved in ecotourism. You've got people sitting out in beautiful nature, getting massages. You've got fishing. You've got those ATVs. I wanted to do that. That is so cool. Those ATVs are battery operated. They're electric ATVs. And picture yourself going on a tour of all of this preserved land that we have, with a guide telling me what's out there. I'm 74 years old. I'm not going to go walking through the woods, but I get on one of those and listen to what the guide is telling me and showing me all the natural beauty that we have around us. Let's take advantage of it without destroying it. Let's preserve it. You got horseback riding. We're the equestrian capital of Southwest Florida. I think we have more to offer here than they do in Ocala. So that's the kind of activities we're looking at. Then when you look at what does an eco lodge look like, next. These are some examples of eco lodges. They tuck themselves into the environment. They don't destroy it. The top one, let me see, the one on the top to the right, that's a tent. That's called glamping, right?
Yes.
But the opportunities are just amazing when you look at this. And I wasn't aware of any of this. It got introduced to me because of members of the board that did have that experience. But that's what we were looking at for the eco lodges. Next, the projections for that was a construction of $10 to $40 million and over 300 jobs. Now, keep in mind, this is going back 2011, so dollars have changed a little bit. And you'd integrate those lodges with trails, equestrian, water, using our canal system to go from one to the other, and really create an environment where we could be the ecotourism capital of Florida. We don't have a beach, but we've got more natural beauty, and we should be able to share it in a way that encourages the people who are concerned about the environment would want to come and see this. Next. The next one was War Mineral Springs, and we've gone through this a lot. So next, I'll just show you these. We've had this on the show before. It was a 200 boutique resort, 2 stories high. There was 2 conference centers where you could have a wedding, you could have parties, and what have you, and you would not disturb the spring itself.
All right, so I want to stop you here for a second, because there are some things that we need to talk about that bring value to living here and having things like this. We don't have any of what you just said.
No.
And
yet we talked about this back in 2011. You know, when you build an eco lodge, and John, you know this, I actually had two well-known companies interested in building that. And what you do is you negotiate with them and say, look, you're going to build that eco lodge, but we'd like to have access over here so that the local residents of Northport could also come out and see this natural beauty that everybody talks about. So we'd have the almost like a national park setting.
Right.
But why can't the residents participate in it? It's not just for tourists. We pick up the byproduct of that. So, and the same with Warm Mineral Springs. Next, you know, we can really do this. So we took a position on what back then was an invitation to negotiate. Number one, foremost, was to preserve the spring. If the spring gets destroyed, there is no attraction. So you want to do everything you can to preserve it. Put a resort on premise. Why? Because a resort is a destination. A hotel is not a destination. A hotel is a place you stay while you're going somewhere else. A resort is all encompassing. Everything is there. You don't have to leave. So we wanted to make it a destination. We'd focus on wellness, and make sure that we would have public access. Again, $20 to $80 million in new construction and 300 jobs. Next. The next one was the West Side, what we know of as West Villages. Now, back in 2011, we didn't have Mattamy Homes, but this is what we were looking at next. We saw an eco lodge on the premise somewhere along the Myakka area. We saw an education center where seniors would come to Northport, similar to other places around the country, where they would be focused on education, where people want to continue to learn. And usually you get universities tied in with that. We had USF interested in participating with that. We had a school of hospitality, was going to be USF, and then some guy gave them $10 million and they built it in Sarasota. So money does talk sometimes. That was the Culinary Institute. So that's what we saw, all integrated into that area. Next. And then Toledo Blade, which was really what started this whole thing. Next, this is what we saw in Toledo Blade, a healthcare district with a teaching hospital, and we had access to Shands back when we were doing this, a teaching clinic, a children's hospital, a women's medical center, a telemedicine center, a medical tech institute where they're building artificial limbs and all sorts of medical devices. So we've become a major become a major location for medical in all ways. We weren't going to get a hospital. We knew that. We kept getting fighting from Sarasota Memorial. They didn't want to see a hospital here. So what we did is we went for niches. A teaching hospital, I got all three hospital CEOs to agree to that. They could all use that. A teaching clinic. A children's hospital, we've got the highest population of young people. We have different medical needs than Venice does, okay? Than Sarasota does, where the average age is 60, 65. Ours is 40, 42. A women's hospital, medical center, women's needs are different when they're younger than when they're older. So we saw a lot of that in, you know, an entire district all around the Toledo Blade corridor, where people could come from as far away as Tampa and Naples, and we'd be an hour's drive. So we'd have access to all of that. Next, we saw an education workforce development district, and we fought hard, and we were instrumental in getting the Suncoast Technical College here. In fact, the school board, you can look it up, gave the Northport EDC an award, along with, back then it was the state senator, who also got an award. But that became a fruition. Next. And then the entertainment district. If you're going to have young people working here, They got to have a place to go. They can't be leaving town to go up to Tampa to go party. I'm sorry, they need to have, you got to have some stuff. So how do we create an entertainment district? And we came up with the concept of a regional entertainment district, pulling from the area from Naples to Tampa. That would give us enough population access to create a district that would be, known throughout the state. I'm going through this real fast, and John, I can talk about each one of these slides for hours, but I'm making it fast. If anybody is interested, feel free to call me. The economic projections for that project on Toledo was 100 to 300 million with over 500 jobs. In summary, you've got a total of almost $500 million to $750 million in new construction and 1,700 plus new jobs.
And I'm going to say this to you because I'm glad you just said what you said. That I know you're going through this, and the reason that you're trying to get this information out is what?
I think it's important that people know the full story about what this was about. There are people out there that will say, oh, they were in it for themselves. Well, I'm sorry, that's what people do. In business, yeah, they are interested, but they're not crooks. These are reputable firms, and you've got to create an environment for them to work. Northport needs what we were presenting here. They contributed a lot of time, money, and effort, and it was all privately funded. The city of Northport didn't give 2 cents into this plan.
Well, and I want to stick here for a second because I want you to finish your presentation. I do, because I know where a lot of this information came from. But when you have no one talking about your town, and you're not gathering a group of people to talk about your town, such as the list of people that are in this presentation, we're not going to get anywhere if we don't get all these people interested in our space that we live.
Well, it's right, John, but I think just as important is this, and I always emphasize this, this is the Northport Economic Development Corporation's plan. It's not the only plan. Show me yours. Give me another plan. But the bottom line is, what is the plan? And I think a plan needs to be able to get presented to the public in a way that's simple enough to understand and that they can get behind. It's not a technical plan.
Do we have a current comprehensive plan that the city commissioners follow now?
We have a comp plan, which they have to follow by state law, but it's 3-inch thick binders of code. It's not a plan that you or I could understand. It's written for the people who are building in the city. What's the visionary plan? What is the vision? Ask the commissioners, ask every commissioner, tell me what you see in Northport in 10 years.
But slow down right here, because I think in order for people to view what you're talking about, they have to understand the difference between the two. What is a comprehensive plan for the city in some, and just give that definition, but then turn around and explain that this is a flex plan. This isn't set in stone. This is a workable document that it's a good start. Correct?
Yes, it is. And to your point, the comp plan, and I'm going to do it from a layman's term, is a detailed plan for growth for a city or a municipality. The county has to have it, and so does every city. And I think they have to present it or update it every 7 or 8 years. Out of that comes the ULDC codes. Okay? What this is a vision. This says, hey, Northport would like to see a healthcare district. Everybody sits there and says, hey, that's a great idea. Let's do that. Then you look at the code and you say, and your comp plan, you say, does it support that? And then if it doesn't, then you make a decision. We're not going to have healthcare. Or we need to change our code to make sure we can get healthcare. But we don't have that. We don't have that vision piece up front. The piece that the average resident can hold up 1 or 2 sheets of paper and say, this is what my city is going to do. This is what the future looks like for my city.
So, and I'm gonna ask you this: those people who are out there right now who are talking about there's another parts store, there's another car repair place, there's another mattress store. Those all fit within the visionary plan of what you're talking about, right?
They could, but here, that
was a trick question.
I know. I figured it was because you know my answer.
I know.
What I've always said to commissioners is if you've got a visionary plan, and if you're going to put on Toledo Blade and you've identified an area that is going to be healthcare, then you don't put low income housing there. And then they'll say, well, you can't stop them. That's the code. The zoning allows them to do that. And I say to them, then what you do is you tell that developer, look, we really don't want it there. We've got a vision for this. Can you help us out? Maybe go over here. And if he says no, then you say, okay, well, I'll tell you what. We're going to watch real closely. And if you're 1/4 of an inch off on your windows, we're going to ask you to put them in again. If the color is 10% off, you can get real crit. And people look at me like I'm nuts, but look at what our president just did. He's saying to companies who aren't following vaccination, they're going to take federal funding away from you. They're going to penalize you for not following his vision or the vision of the country. You can do that. It's done every single day. It's bull when they say you can't do it because the code allows them to do it. It does, but if you don't have a plan, then anything works. You can put anything anywhere.
Well, I think I stop right there because I want you to say that again, because versus the first part of what you said, I'm not disagreeing with. But the second part of what you said is a much softer way of saying, if we knew what we were doing with a piece of land, the vision would be totally different. And actually the selling side of it and the working together with whoever's purchasing it has a different vision. And I'll say that because we have codes. Everything has to be a certain way. The signs have to be a certain way now. The colors of the buildings have to be a certain color. Those weren't that way 20 years ago. They really weren't.
Nope.
They changed the code to fit what their vision was. Correct?
That's correct. They created, and 41 is a good example, the Mediterranean district or the activity center, and all the buildings have to have that Mediterranean look. And if they don't have it, they have a certain amount of time before they have to ultimately come into code. So you can do it when you've got a vision and a plan.
Well, I just gave you that example because it's one that they did.
Yes.
And so to say that something can't be done, they did it.
I know that, but usually when you ask elected officials, why do we get so many mattress stores? They'll say, well, we can't stop it. That's the code. And you just said they have stopped it. They have done. It's where, if the will is there. But, getting back to this plan, John, I want to make sure that everybody understands this is one plan. Let's have 10 plans. Let's pick the best.
Or have 10 plans and calculate what's good out of each one.
Absolutely. But I've never seen.
If you don't have a plan, if you don't have a vision, and I'm going to go right back to the comprehensive plan for a second. So the comprehensive plan that they have to follow now, if they don't follow that, and I'm going to ask the commissioners when they come on, if they didn't follow the comprehensive plan that we're doing now, there's a consequence for that. correct?
Yes. Well, if somebody was doing any development that didn't fit, that didn't go to according to the code for that development, yes. But
Yes.
the question to ask is, tell me what the city will look like in 10 years. Because
I don't know that they have an answer.
They don't, because their answer, and it's a government answer. I learned this. It's not anybody's fault. It's the way the government thinks. To the government, the comp plan is their plan. It tells them how many pipes they're going to put in, and when it's very technically oriented. And in a government standpoint, that's their idea of a plan. I asked one of our members to send me a plan that he thought was a good plan. And he sent me Daytona Beach and what they were doing with the boardwalk, with the pier. I'm sorry. I mean, you had to see this thing. It was full of pictures and excitement. Open up the comp plan. It's 3-inch binders of essentially code. Doesn't mean it's bad.
Right.
Okay, it's just the way the government thinks. So what I think is needed is a mixture between the two. A funny story, not a funny story, a true story with Murdoch Village. Now, some people will say, whatever they want to say about Murdoch Village, but it was 1,200 acres that had, I think, 70 homes on it. That the county grouped together to create an economic engine. And the commissioner who was driving that was Matt DeBoer, and he couldn't get anybody to agree with him. They went out, and I think he printed up 5 boards that were pictures, artist renderings of what it would look like. And people got behind it because people understand the visual of it. Sid Kitson, when he built Babcock Ranch, it was pictorial. When he was talking to the public, there were pictures that you could look at and say, oh, I get that. I like that. But then they had to bring that down to a code. But the public didn't read the code. They just looked at the pictures and said, I want to see that. That's what I want in my community. So that's what we don't have that. We've got that piece missing. So nobody can say what the future is going to look like. And I think as a city, we should be able to say that. Because if it doesn't get built the way we want it built, guess what? It's still going to get built. It's just not going to be the beautiful city that you want.
And we've talked about this over and over again, because unless people are attentive on what's happening around them, they're not gonna see this.
Yeah.
It's just gonna start happening around them. And then the questions are going to be, why do we need 5 mattress centers? Why do we need this? And we have 5 of these already. We got 10 of these already. I don't care what it is. The problem is we don't have a group of people like is on this list right now. Do we have that group of people meeting right now and having these conversations about future and what the city will look like? Do we have that today?
No, and let's go to the next slide, because, and I'll close out on this. Here's the group. These are the companies that are involved with this. Adashi is a leading architectural firm out of Miami. BB&T Bank, we had from the regional president, he handled everything from Bradenton to Naples. Calusa National Bank, Core Construction, a $1 billion construction company, Fawcett Memorial, G. Matthews, Gil Bain, Grapevine Communications and Advertising Agency, the Gulf Coast Builders Exchange, the Gulf Coast Community Foundation, Harvard Jolly Architects, one of the leading architectural firms for education and medical. The Key Agency, one of the biggest insurance companies here in town. Mark Asparilla, a leading infectious disease doctor. I think he's passed away now, but great guy. The Northport Area Chamber of Commerce, the law firms, Publix. I mean, the list just goes on. And these are players that can do something. They can actually do something. And that's what we need. And we need to partner with those kind of businesses. Next.
We're talking 8 years ago.
Yeah, we're talking 2011, 10 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
These are dated 13. That's why I brought that up.
Oh, I'm okay. That's because the EDC, we introduced this plan in January of 2012.
Okay.
And then, the next slide just talks about the next steps, getting community involvement. And then this was the best. David Jones, who was the principal of Northport High School back then, a great guy. And he said something, and I had to put it in the presentation. Cities change because people of vision and commitment come together to dream the future. That is powerful.
Yep.
That is so powerful.
And what are we lacking today?
People of vision. I don't know.
We're lacking the statement.
I don't want to get into that, but there's something to work towards. Next. And then I just said thank you to everybody. So now this presentation is available to whoever wants it. It's on my site that I just created. It's called FOR Northport, spell it all out, .com. And if you look up Northport, it'll say NPEDC. Click on that and you'll find it. And then you can make copies of it, printed, whatever you want to do. And what I'm going to do is, if you go to that site, under the Vision Northport, I've got a picture of the Regional Entertainment District and the Restaurant Incubator. But look at some of the other things that we did, and I will be adding these as I get them out of my dust and get them into PDF formats. But the Citizen Master Plan, an equestrian center, workforce development initiative, canal races, EcoFest, the Masquerade Ball, event and festival schedules, ambassador program, the dragon boat races, just amazing activities that all coming from the people. And we need that. We need people getting involved. This is fun stuff, guys. And we need a government that's willing to listen. And, don't say no. Say, how can we? And the government should be saying, what can we do to make it better?
I'm going to ask you this, and I know the answers, but I'm going to ask you this anyway. Okay.
Sure. Put me on the spot. Go ahead.
So the cities that are out there that you're naming that are creating economic drivers for their community, they're also creating an environment in their community that is supportive by the community. They're not driving away. They're staying within their community. Mm-hmm. So in saying that, most of these cities that you're talking about are older cities. How old are we?
1950. We were incorporated in 1959. So
1959. So we're an infant in compared to the cities that you're talking about. We really are. We're gaining ground on not being able to say that anymore. The problem is, and you tell me if I'm wrong, if we don't start acting like we've been around, we're going to get built on anyway. And they're going to do it however they deem fashionable. I don't care about the 3,000 people that think they've got control. When it comes to building something, these guys are going to come in here and they're going to build whatever they want to do.
That's right. And John, I'll challenge you on what you just said. We are a young community when you compare it to Daytona. We're an old community when you compare it to Lakewood Ranch.
That's true.
When you compare it to Welland Park, even though they're not a city, these guys came in just the last 5 years, for crying out loud, with a vision. And what did they do at their recent reveal party? They showed you what it was going to look like. They didn't tell you the code. They didn't show you the code book, which I'm sure it's volumes, but they showed you the pictures of what it's going to look like. Kitson with Babcock Ranch. Brand new, spanking new, puts us to shame. What's the difference? They all have a plan. And they can tell you what they will look like 10 years from now and 20 years from now.
So what's it take to get this ramped back up again?
To get what ramped back up again? Vision Northport?
EDC.
EDC? You know, I tried it. We went back to this commission. I think the only two that weren't on were Barbara and
Alice?
Who?
Alice White?
Alice, yes. And they rejected it. Now, we asked for money. And I'll tell you why we asked for money. Because I couldn't get anybody interested in participating because of the way they were treated the first round that we went through it. The city showed no support. They put up tens of thousands of dollars for that EDC, for the love of Northport. And the city didn't even give them a thank you, didn't even give them the time of day. So what we were looking for was, I think, $50,000 just to say we got some skin in the game. And then we can go back to some of these businesses and say the city is serious this time. But they would just say, well, anything that's good for economic development, we agree with, but they wouldn't tell the story. They wouldn't promote it. So they didn't want to go through it again. So to get it to go again, I think the city's got to put some money up. The county does it. You know, every city pays into their EDC. And counter to what people think, an economic development corporation does not run economic development. It comes up with the plan. Then the city has to agree to it. If the city doesn't agree with it, you go back to the drawing board.
Hold on. Put that question back up again. Go ahead and read that question, Pete.
What does the city's EDC think of the vision you put forth? When was the last time you presented it to the city? Hi, Bill. I can't tell you how many times I've presented this plan to the city. I know that your economic development manager knows the plan, the city manager. I presented it to every city manager, including Jason. They all know the plan. Commissioners all know the plan. I mean, I do this, by the way, for free. I don't get paid for any of this. I never did. So,
Commissioner McDowell has a question. Babcock Ranch and Lakewood Ranch and Welland Park are using private funds for their development endeavors. That makes a huge difference. Is that true?
I don't know if I would call that true from the development standpoint. Yes, but there's partnerships with the cities, as with Northport. Northport's got to put sewer in for Welland Park. They've got to do the things the city has to do. And yes, most of it is private funding. The developers come in and build it. They're not asking for you to build the buildings for them. The EDC never asked for any money. We had Shan's medical school interested in working with us down here. We had a lot of interest. I mean, unbelievable interest that we had. Now, it was early interest. So would it have resulted in something? I don't know. But we had early interest.
If and I understand what you're asking. I get it. That had to have been at least a year ago when you presented to the commission, correct?
Maybe a little longer. Yeah.
Maybe longer.
Yep.
So and I guess the reason I was asking what would it take to get this started is that if we don't start, and maybe Commissioner McDowell will put something out there too. She's really good about responding and trying to stay on top of stuff. But to me, I'd like to know if we actually do have anything visionary for the rest of the city like this. Welland Park, if we're waiting on developers to come in and do it private funding wise, I'm not so sure that we're going to get to where we want to go. I'm just not sure.
Well, the developers, if you look at some of the things that we talked about in there, the hospital, the teaching hospital, that's all paid for privately. That's not government money. They may ask that you got sewer to the location, which is you're going to do that anyway. That they'll ask for that kind of stuff, but they don't ask for money to build it. No developer has ever. I don't think Welland Park, anybody at Mattamy asked the government to give them any money. They just ask that we have sewer in, that we have the things that come along with being a part of the city that are, they have to run the sewer lines, they have to run the water lines, that kind of stuff. But, that's it.
Well, I actually think it's kind of reverse of what she was saying, though. I think they had a vision. They put it down on paper. They made sure it was going to work, and they made sure everybody around that community knew exactly what the vision was. And now they've got everybody talking about it, and it's not built.
What are you talking about now? I'm lost with what the city.
The West Village is downtown.
Oh yeah, it's not built yet, but there's a vision for it. But there's a vision for it, and there's a detail, and he'll tell you it's going to be built. I think it'll be open in 2023. Did he say? Or
take the pictures down. Take the pictures down. Nobody's talking about it.
Nobody needs to talk about it.
I'm just saying, if you take those pictures down, nobody's going to talk about it. I understand they did the groundbreaking. I get it. It's still not built. The groundbreaking is one thing. Actually seeing it done, it can only be done by the pictures they rendered. So if you don't have a plan that people get to see, people don't talk about it.
Yes. Okay. I think I got your point then. Okay. Yeah. What we should have is a plan that maybe 5 or 10 slides that you can hold up that become, on everybody's mind, that shows what we're going to look like and what we're working on.
First phase is scheduled for 2022.
Yeah. So
I think I know what Commissioner McDowell was trying to do. I tend to agree with her on what she said, though. It does take the private side of things to get these things built. What you're talking about, though, is why can't we have the conversation? Why can't we get the people together? Why can't we get these things in a forward-moving direction for the rest of the community? Welland Park's gonna build, and the city of Northport's gonna say okay, because they're not playing an integral part in saying what's going there at all. It's just they're going yep. All 5 of them are going yep. That's because they don't have to do anything else but say yes, because these guys are powerful enough and they're spending the money up front. The point that you're trying to make, though, is we don't even have a conversation piece anywhere else. We're just talking about Welland Park because they got the pictures. And now, yes, they're breaking the ground. Yes, they're moving it forward. That's where the money's going right now. But the rest of the town, we have a lot of land left. We have a lot of opportunity left.
Okay, do I have time to give you an example of what the difference?
Yes.
On how you make this happen?
Quickly.
There was a lot of issues on Orange Hammock Ranch, and I've fought for years giving that land away. It's 5,000 acres of ranch. About 2,000 of it is actually the Orange Hammock. And I fought it, and I got called in by the president of the conservatory group that was trying to sell it for somebody.
1 minute.
And and I said, why don't you guys give the city of Northport 500 acres? Just give it to them. So at least they have some land, because what do I keep hearing the city say? We don't own the land. Well, what if you got 500 of those acres? Most of it's right along I-75, and it's crummy land. It's not environmentally sensitive. Then I called a developer, and one that would build an eco lodge and one that would build a retail center on a totally solar power. They were both interested. Who in the city is reaching out to these developers with visions, with ideas to try to get them interested? I got both of them to say yes.
All right, so I'm going to stop you right there, because we're gonna keep talking about this. We're going to keep breaking these things down, but I really have to cut off the air today on time, so I don't get dinged. But
go to fornorthport.com, FOR Northport.com. Register. Yeah. I'll send you my blogs.
Not a problem. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. This is John Rawlings with Real Talk Radio 97.5 FM saying have a great, safe evening, and we'll talk